Hi there. We're going to wait a little bit because people are coming into the room. I need you to sit down and get comfortable. Looking forward to this chat. Okay, people are coming in, loving it, loving it. I'm just going to give it another little bit. I hope everybody's having a great picture book Palooza. We've had a really busy day. There have been lots of people visiting our booth and our various chats, and it's been great. Okay, I think we've got a nice crowd here, so I'm going to get started. Hi, and welcome to the Kids Books Illustrators in Dialogue panel. I'm Judy Brunsek, and I'm the Director of Sales and Marketing here, and I'm really pleased to be moderating this panel. Before we start with our panel, though, I'd like to say that Kids gratefully acknowledges that our office in Toronto is located on the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Chippewa, the Wendat, the Anishinaabe, and the Haudenosaunee peoples. We also acknowledge that the land Toronto sits on is covered by Treaty 13, known as the Toronto Purchase, signed with the Mississaugas of the Credit, and the Williams Treaties, signed with multiple Mississaugas and Chippewa bands. Our panelists and attendees are joining from many different places today, and we encourage you to learn more about and reflect on the land that you are joining us from and its history. Let me introduce our panel and their books. Élodie Duhameau is the illustrator of While We Wait, written by Judy Sadler. Written by Judy Sadler. I have lost my script. Written by Judy Sadler. It is a wonderful book of that has a very cool grandmother and a super cool grandson spend time together as they wait and wait and craft and wait and wait. And when the reveal is made, it's a beautiful moment of pure joy when the boy first meets his new little brother. Sakshi Mangal is the creator of Many Hats of Louis the Rat, and the first book she has both written and illustrated. Sakshi grew up in India and moved to England to complete her MA in illustration at the Cambridge School of Art. She now lives in Vancouver, BC, where she ponders future picture books from her studio. Many Hats of Louis the Rat, publishing this October, is an inspiring look at how one rat can look at objects and imagine how they'd be reconfigured and reused to be useful. Sometimes slightly off in his ideas, ultimately Louis's kindness and craftiness end up making him a hero. Suharu Ogawa is the illustrator of Hooray for Trucks, written by Susan Hughes. Originally from Japan, Suharu is trained in art history and cultural anthropology and has worked as a university librarian. She currently teaches at OCAD University in Toronto, Ontario, where she now makes her home. In Hooray for Trucks, when the trucks and diggers are working hard, they are happiest. They certainly don't want to be asked to stop working and to get washed. But their minder insists, and it's only when the trucks, now sparkling and tidy, realize they were being prepared for a truck parade that their smiles appear again, and they happily perform for the admiring crowd. After all, what kid doesn't love trucks? I'm going to ask the panelists to join me on screen now, please. Hey, hello. Great. And Élodie, you too on screen? We'd love to see you. Perfect. Excellent. That's fabulous. Okay. So today we're going to have 20 to 25 minutes to explore the ways that these illustrators approach their craft. We'll have a few minutes at the end for questions, so please type them into the Q&A area that's accessible at the bottom of your screen. And if you just want to be super enthusiastic and say nice things while we're talking, please use the chat function. That's also at the bottom of your screen. I'll be monitoring both, and we'll take some time at the end for some questions. But first, I want to really explore the whole idea of illustration with our panelists. I'm going to start with two of you, Élodie and Suharu. You've illustrated somebody else's text. When you got the manuscript, what were your first steps? How do you approach interpreting a manuscript and developing a vision for the book? Let me start with you, Élodie.
Hi, everyone. Then first, this story reminded me a lot of my relationship with my grandmother. This is a story of a long wait a child has to spend with his grandmother. So I spent a lot of time when I was a child with my grandmother, and I could spend hours watching her knitting while I was for hours drawing. So it was kind of meditative moments. And first, as usually, I start to sketch the characters, and right after that, I wanted to make I made a lot of research. I wanted to find the right mood, the right render to translate the sweetness of their relationship and the sensitivity of the story. So once I had those two steps done, sketches and characters and the render, the mood, the colors, I finally could start drawing the illustrations.
Yeah, I love that your grandmother is pretty cool. You know, she's not some doddering old lady. She's one hit chick. I love that. So Haru.
So process for me was very spontaneous and not so spontaneous. It's a little bit confusing. So when I first read Susan's manuscript, it has a really nice rhyming. And so I could immediately hear like a rhythm, like dun, 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 dun. And then I used to play a drum in a marching band without knowing how to read music score. I basically just mimic friends' beat. And so when I read this manuscript, I could hear that beat. And so it was easy for me in terms of coming up with a thumbnail because, you know, I was able to work with a lot of geometric shape because I'm dealing with a lot of trucks. So there are a lot of like circle, triangle, like a long line, you know, big shape and then a small shape. So it was almost as if I was giving a music score, and it was time for me to sort of like a play around with my own instrument. So that was really spontaneous. Not so spontaneous part was actually drawing trucks. You know, it couldn't really be a very abstract truck because Susan talks about specific trucks that I wasn't quite familiar with. And we ended up putting about over 50 trucks. And they're not 50 different kinds of trucks, but I had to do a lot of research to understand what a bobcat looks like or what a roller truck looks like. So that research actually took longer than coming up with the thumbnail.
I love it. First of all, I just have to say, why do we not have the fact that you were a drummer in a marching band in your bio? I mean, come on, that's like a life experience. So. Okay, Sakshi, I'm going to go to you. You are both the author and the illustrator of your book. So this is chicken and egg. You know, which came first, the text or the illustrations? And how did the book evolve as you went through the editorial and design process with your editor here and designer at Owl Kids?
Hi, everyone. Actually, Judy, I'll be honest, it wasn't text and it wasn't pictures as well. It was just me sitting in my dorm in my university with lots of paper around me. And I was really bored working on the project I was doing. And I wanted to create something just for myself, you know, I just wanted to work for myself for once. You know, I was in the university, we always had to do projects. And then I ended up with this paper and which was looking like a hat. And then I ended up decorating it. And it turned out to be a very fancy looking hat. And that's how I started developing the idea. So to your answer, it would be illustrations, yes, but more like collage illustrations that led to text for me. And to your next question, my editor and designer played a very important role because their constant feedback really helped me to evolve the book. And I remember working on my first spread and really putting my all of it into it because it was like my first author illustrated book and I wanted to do so much. They were like, relax, you know, you need to go slow, and that really helped me because I wasn't happy doing the first spread. And you know, they were like that if you put yourself in it more than it is required, you will be happy. And that really helped me to work on other spreads as well. So that really helped the process. And my editor was, as it was my first book, my editor really helped me with the text to make the narrative stronger. And then at the design stage, I was more confident because I knew that if I am not happy with the piece that I'm doing, I don't expect others to enjoy it either. So that really helped me, evolve the book further. And yeah, that's it.
So there was a little bit of therapy involved there. Is that what we're saying?
Yeah, you can say that. Yeah.
I think that there is, yes, there's definitely the relationship between picture book creators and the editors and designers is definitely kind of the symbiotic relationship where you're definitely working together and supporting each other pretty significantly. That's great. And so there is no chicken and there is no egg, is what you're saying, Sakshi. There was a hat, is what really
hat,
started
exactly.
it off. There was a hat.
A fancy
Excellent.
hat.
A fancy hat. Perhaps not so useful hat. And LOUIE would not have been
it's not
happy
useful
with
at all. Yeah, I forgot to mention it's not useful at all.
Okay, so now you're illustrators. So you have to create your work in a space. So do you have a separate studio? Where do you work? How is it set up? Do you want to tell us about that? Élodie, why don't you start, please?
Well, I work in a shared space with 8 other artists. Many of them are also illustrators. It's been something like 4 years now. It's a really cozy space. It's really a fun space, and it's really stimulating to have those beautiful creative people around me. So I really like this place, and I also can work at home depending on what I have to do. For example, when I write, when it's a writing moment, I also do writing sometimes. I prefer sometimes to work at home with a bit of silence.
So that's interesting. You're working amongst other artists, which, so is it a quiet space? I mean, you said that it's kind of, cozy and quiet, but how do you not just, I would just spend all of my time talking to everybody. How do you not do that?
I have to, I have to be quiet when I have to respect the quiet. It's a quiet space because a lot of artists are also writing. But each lunch is a really noisy moment. We have to.
So you save it for lunchtime and you socialize then. I love that. That's great. That's great. Suharu, what about you?
I also have a home studio and a shared space in here in downtown Toronto. Home office I share with my partner, who is not an illustrator, so I can't really make a mess. So this is like supposed to be a very clean room where I do my research. But when I have to make a lot of mess, then I go to a studio, and it's facing daycare. So I share the space with one another illustrator, but it's also joined by a bunch of children and their teachers, always singing for me, I would like to believe.
And inspiring you, obviously.
Yeah.
Obviously, the playfulness that comes through in your illustrations.
Yep,
Definitely.
it's very lively.
Yeah, yes, very much. And Sakshi, what about you?
I have my home studio, which is very messy right now. And it has lots of paper and lots of hats everywhere. And it has no window. That's the drawback. So I keep a lot of plants to, to have fresh air around me. And I share it. I don't share it with my husband, but I live with my husband. But he lets me keep it messy. So I'm happy with that.
The door stays closed. Is that what you're saying?
The door stays closed.
The door
stays closed.
closed.
Music is on, and I'm in my own zone.
Excellent. That's wonderful. So it sounds like each of you has a great space that you're working in, and I think it comes through definitely in the illustrations that you've created. So in each case, there's a lot of energy in your books. You know, there's a lot of things going on, and there's all these different kinds of things that are going on. But so when it's also partly that's true of the stories themselves. How do you convey that? Like, what's the best way, or how do you manage to convey that energy, because you are taking something and just putting it onto what is going to be a flat space? So Suharu, I'm going to start with you.
Sure. So in this case, it was really easy for me because Susan composed the music, right? And earlier, Judy, you mentioned about working closely with the editor, designer, author, and the illustrator. So like for me, it was almost as if Susan wrote the music score, I played, and designer Diane Robertson and an editor Jennifer Stokes, they're the conductors. So, you know, I had the tendency to kind of go all over. It had a great rhythm, and it was going a little bit rampant. And that was when Diane and then Jennifer would step in and say, hey, you know what, it's fun, it has so much energy, but I think we need to focus, or we have to stay on a course. It was really interesting because one of the spread, it was the second last from the last spread. So, you know, the book, it goes from like a left to right, left to right, left to right, and there's so much rhythm and a movement and a flow. And the second from the last, it sort of like stops, because this is where like a moment before all this, like a big party starts. And I drew it in a way that it was continuous momentum, left to right. And Diane stopped me and said, hey, you know what? I think we have to enjoy this moment of like anticipation, because everyone in this spread is looking for this big party to start. And then you're just like going on your own. So why don't you like stop us? And so it was a really interesting way of working. Like I'm playing almost like a jazz, improvising, you know, somewhat spontaneously. And Diane and Jennifer would come in and somewhat doing this conducting part. So it was really, really fun.
I love the way you're comparing this to a musical score, and how because there is so much interaction, and and definitely you want the sound to be great. Like if that's what we're ultimately doing, you want the sound to be great. Sakshi, what about you? How do you convey your
for me,
energy? Sorry.
No worries. It was more of looking at my surroundings and looking at people. You know, I spent a lot of time just looking around me, you know, doing a lot of live drawing, which really helps me before I begin a project, and just looking at where I want my characters to be, their surroundings, and you know, that really helped me to develop my characters. And the challenge would be to portray the originality of my work, and how you know, others would be able to relate with it is the most important thing for me. And that's a challenge as well, that others can relate, that, you know, for instance, in this book, that others can understand Louie's passion and, you know, Louie's surroundings. You know, I want it's a challenge that the reader can be a part of Louie's life as well. So I think that would be the biggest challenge.
Okay, thank you. Sorry about that. I work in an office that has a motion sensor light, and so if I'm not moving enough, it goes off. So my apologies for that. So it's back on. If I start waving, that's why I'm doing it. Élodie, what about you? How did you convey? You've got a lot of energy in the book, and it's kind of suppressed energy, but also active energy. How did you go about conveying that?
Well, while we wait, there are a lot of there's variety of rhythm, because it's about a long wait. So I have to show silence. I had to show the wait, the long moments, and so really static scenes, and moments when it's about. I'm sorry. When you are an illustrator, you spend a lot of time in front of your paper, in front of your screen. You're sitting and I was really waiting for the moment when I will draw those scenes, those really dynamic scenes. So I had a lot of fun, and it gives me a lot of energy. So I don't really think about it. It's really natural. So to put my energy on those scenes because I can't wait to draw them. I don't know if I really answered the question.
Well, you did. I mean, I think I think that you're reflecting, I think the little boy's impatience in the book, because you really, you have to kind of play out the story and show the waiting, but also just show that kind of nervous energy that is in the situation. And there are particular, and we will be seeing soon, there are particular scenes that are very dynamic, and it's clear that there are a lot of things going on. So no, I think you did a great job of answering that question. Okay, so just a reminder that we will have a Q&A at the end. I see a couple of questions up there, and we're just on our last question here before we go to the Q&A. So if you're contemplating a question, I'd be happy to relay it later. Now we are going to talk about favorite spreads in each of your books, and because for sure, I'm sure you love them all equally. And yet, there are certain ones that just kind of come through for you. So let me start with Sakshi. What is your favorite spread?
My favorite spread is when Louis is finally selling his useful hats, and all the other rats come to dispose their not so useful hats and buy his useful hats. So it was a very challenging page. That's one of the reasons I actually like it so much, because I learned a lot from the spread, and I had the opportunity to think about how useful hats would look, which was very much a learning curve for me, because I didn't know how useful can hats be. So yeah, and I really enjoyed working on this spread because I love seeing little things in an image. Rather than just a simple image. I like busy illustration, so I had the opportunity to put that on paper, and yeah, that's one of the main reasons why I love working on the spread, because I learned so much from Louis in the spread.
So okay, so your narrator instructed you. Is that what you're saying, that
Exactly,
that Louis was
yeah.
helpful to you in terms of this? And there is a lot going on here, so I think this is wonderful, and a lot of things that kids can spend some time, just poking around with and seeing what's going on. Okay, Suharu, over to you. What's your favorite spread?
Okay, so this is my favorite spread, and I think in many ways this book and this spread in particular sort of reminds me of my own childhood. I am one of the 4 kids, so I have 3 other siblings, and you can see there are 4 trucks. And I was born and raised in Japan, and the bath culture is big, right? So when we were growing up, and when I was a little kid, I used to take a bath together with my siblings, or sometimes with the whole family. And just like this book, as a kids, we just refused to take a shower. We just wanted to continue playing with each other. And my parents trying to drag us to the shower. And so this really reminds me of that time, 4 of us somewhat being rebellious, but knowing that we have to get clean. And another reason why I love this spread, and I guess throughout the book, and one of the joy of being an illustrator is that sometimes you can put the elements, the visual elements that are not in the script. So when we were working in a thumbnail, we decided to throw a few cats. Now, I am extremely allergic to cats, but I love drawing cats. And the editor and the designer, they, I guess, gave me that kind of a freedom. So throughout the book, you actually see those 2 cats interacting with each other or interacting with kids or the truck that are not part of the book. But I really enjoyed adding this a little another elements to this book. So
I love it. Secret elements, little Easter eggs, we call them. That's wonderful. So that's another thing that that kids can take a look for in the books. Okay, and Élodie, over to you.
Yes. Oh, okay, I see. So this scene was really fun to make. It's one of my favorites. At this very moment, we still don't know what they are waiting for, but we know this is a long wait, and this is the moment right before we see the child cannot stay still, cannot wait anymore. He has so much energy. He needs to do something. He needs to move. So the grandma decides to put on some music, and they start to dance, and it starts to have fun. And as I said before, I was really feeling the energy was while I was drawing it. So it's one of my favorite because I really love the mood at this moment that they are exploding their energy.
Yeah, I love it. And it just really, I think it shows so beautifully the relationship between the grandmother and the grandson, that they clearly are very much in sync. And again, you know, another play of music in a picture book, in a very subtle way. Okay, thank you, Élodie. Okay, so we've got a bunch of questions. Look at that. As soon as you suggest that, people start asking questions. Okay, so can you each tell us what medium you work in? I'll start with you, Suharu.
Sure. For this project, I work strictly digital. I have used acrylic and I used to paint. With this one, I really wanted to draw. Sometimes I feel a little bit of limitation when I'm using brush because of the way I paint. I'm a very tight painter. So I really wanted to draw and create that kind of like a sense of flow and a movement. So this book is done in done digitally.
Okay.
So the
And
digital
Élodie?
drawing in digital color.
Okay, thank you. Élodie?
Usually I start with a traditional paper and pencil for sketches, and then I draw on Procreate on my iPad, and then I kind of finalize on my computer with Photoshop. Sometimes I can mix both traditional and digital, but mainly Procreate is my main tool.
Okay. And Sakshi?
I usually draw the sketch first, and then I work with I see which things I need to create on paper and things which I can do digitally. And as LOUIE was in collage, the main rats were in paper. So they were all done with textured paper. And I also created few textures to create that plastic wooden feel to things. So it was a mix of hand drawn first and then taken scanned in and done digitally, rendered digitally.
Okay, so digital art in ultimately in all cases. Okay, a specific question for Sakshi. How did you come up with the name of the book, The Many Hats of Louis the Rat?
Actually, it was The Hat, and I wanted it very short. But then me, my editor, my designer, we all were like, let's go with Many Hats of Louis the Rat because it has more, more feel to it. It's more stronger, and it's more Louis basically. I don't know what I mean by that, but yeah. And then then we ended up with it was initially The Hat, and then it turned and it just ended up being The Many Hats of Louis the Rat.
Well, there's a nice rhythm to the title
Exactly.
that way as well. So
yeah.
And speaking of Louis, is that Louis behind you on your
is.
shelf?
Yes, he
you
is.
want to maybe just let's bring Louis forward because I think people should see how cute Louis is as a crocheted little a little friend. Isn't he adorable? Yes. So that's really called loving your character so much that you really want to see. Are there certain illustration styles? You sort of answered this question, and I'm going to kind of round it up because we've got just maybe a minute left. Does any of you have a preferred illustration style? Suharu, you said that you paint and you like to draw, but do you have a particular favorite style?
Not really. I think it really depends on the project that I'm working on. Yeah.
Okay. And Sakshi?
I usually prefer drawing it first and then taking it digitally, sometimes even adding few things later on, and then scanning it in and adding it on my digital painting. So it's a mix of both.
Yeah. And Élodie, do you have a preferred illustration style?
Do you mean
Like a favorite style of like, do you like to draw the most? Do you like to paint? Do you like to, or is, yes.
Drawing, yes, and digital is my favorite tool, my favorite second tool, my favorite tool to finalize, but I always start with my traditional drawing.
Okay, great. We do have a couple of other questions, but I think we're running out of time here. So I wanted to thank you all, our panelists, for joining us, and you out there in the audience also for joining us and taking some time to hear about the illustration process and how illustrators work. You can review today's books on Edelweiss and NetGalley, which you can get access through our booth. And please stay in our booth for a bit. There's some contests, there's lots of things to do there. And I thank you all for your time. Take care and have a great afternoon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, bye.
Bye.